Hours.
It's first of all, let me say hello and welcome to everyone who's come. I appreciate you giving your time and allowing me to introduce this to the group. It's very special for me because it's kind of the focal point of something that's been happening recently, and it's a preparation for an astrological event, part of an astrological event, but also a numerological event. I'm sure you've heard of something called the Lion's Gate, 888, right? So the reason it's called Lion's Gate 888 is obviously the element that it's the eighth day of the eighth month, and it's 8 days around that. So 4 days before it and 4 days after. It marks going through a vortex. And it is said in some esoteric circles, without mentioning this, I add, but it is said that Jesus was born not in December, but born in July, born in August, excuse me, born in August, and it's likely this date that they're referring to. So this is recognizing that all mythology has a deeper meaning to it, and that's because mythologies are allegorical tales, and sometime long ago, human beings who understood the deeper reality were well aware that we don't remember things unless they have a high emotional value. That high emotional value means that we only really store, we have access to everything, but we store grooves or ruts in the prefrontal cortex that align to memories that had a high negative value, meaning bad, what we define as bad things happen, and those get recorded in the subconscious. So, or we record access to those memories in the subconscious. And then in parallel, but in opposition, diametrically opposed to that, are the positive feelings, the things that have a high positive emotional value. The access to them gets recorded in the prefrontal cortex in what we think of as the egoic mind, so that we can strive towards the positive things, and we can do that in an analytical way. We can work out, well, how did I get there? And how can I plan to recreate the path to that thing? I'm looking at the field in front of me, and I want to work out how to get where I want to go. And that takes planning, where the subconscious is just identifying danger so that we can react quickly to avoid something so that we don't get killed or really hurt, because then planning for the future won't matter. So, this process that I'm wanting to share today is a first pattern recognition, and then a pattern analysis of how we work as a being, as an animal, and then recognize that something more than the obvious is happening. This has dives into quantum physics. This subject has flights of fancy into higher dimensional geometry, but I wanted to make it simple so that the average person could grab it, grab hold of it, and begin to have more agency in their life. And that agency allows one to begin to dance with their higher self, to consciously interact with their future self in a way that they can serve their future self. We're all where we are now because of what happened in the past, and we all will be where we will be in the future because of what we do today. And so this is a process of essentially becoming your own valet for your future self. And that means a personal servant to your future. I hope that's making some sense.
It does.
From that, I can say that I didn't make this. This is stitched together from things I experienced myself in the past, some references that some very successful people at doing this process of manifestation playfully have done, and then my own experience in higher dimensional geometry and quantum physics, and realizing this is not mumbo jumbo. It's actually the most advanced science human beings are just touching on now, but it's also a very personal experience. And it's meant to be fun. Life is meant to be enjoyed. We are here as both receivers and projectors of ultimate reality. The world around us is a mirror that the one created in order to experience he, she, itself, to understand itself in ever greater detail. And it did that by creating a mirror that it could look into and see reflected back to itself its own nature and enjoy that process. The whole point is for it to be a process of celebration. So my work has been to make something that's easy and accessible, that's both practical, dynamic, and also instructive, so that it's possible to go ever and ever deeper into the process. Because we might say that who we really are is a divine process being reflected to us inside a crystalline matrix of consciousness. And as Jesus said, come unto me like little children. If you come into this experience and get drawn into the field of fear, then you begin just reacting to the world outside of you. And it also means that those who want to control, the entities that want to control, if they've learned this process, they understand how to use fear to put the greater portion of the population in a position of fear on the back foot, reacting. And in that reaction, they're giving their sovereignty away. They're bowing to the thing they fear and don't realize that in the process of fear, they're giving all their energy to the thing, the very thing that they're fearing. And what we want to do is understand the nature of reality. It's more like a dream than it is like common sense. Reality is more like insanity than common sense. It's more like a dream than common sense. And enlightenment, one might say, is becoming a full spectrum human being. That we take the matrix that we're in, this dark matrix, that this is very poignant for the time we're in, because we're entering really dark times where fear is being utilized to strip each and every one of us of our agency, to take that energy and impose a narrative that has repeated in cyclical patterns throughout history. And we are at this special moment, a particularly special moment coming up in the next week, where,
Vedanta, can I ask you a
yes,
quick question? They want you to be in a state of fear. Do they strive and live on this energy or what? Why would they want to do
yes,
that?
and there's many ways, many levels to talk about this, and I'll address that really quickly, but I don't want to go too deep because I don't want to lose people who aren't ready to make that journey. But yes, we can
Okay.
say on three different levels that from day to day, we're all dealing with inherited family structure trauma. This is the nature of the human existence. Animals don't carry trauma the way we do. You'll see a gazelle be chased by a lion, and when it escapes, and the lion's attention is then taken away from it, you'll see it just stand still and suddenly shake. You'll see a tremor run across the fascia. What the animal is doing is shaking the muscles to loosen the fascia that's begun to tighten. And that fascia tightening begins to restrict your movements. It begins to limit the degree that the lymph glands can clear toxins from the body, and and because humans, we don't shake off our fear. We tend, by the time we're getting towards middle age, the fascia is already tightening up. We can't stretch. It's hard to touch your toes or lie on the ground and throw a leg over to one side or do sitting in lotus pose. These are all indications of accrued trauma. So that's on a basic physical level, that each one of us has that experience. And of course, an animal that's a predator recognizes when it scares an animal enough, the animal will actually adopt a playing dead. It will just drop as a defense mechanism. It sometimes will just drop before the predator can grab it, particularly if the predator gets its teeth around a prey's throat. The prey will surrender in order to not experience the pain, the threat that the predator is imposing. And in fact, that's a great defense mechanism, because if the predator lets it go, believing that it's dead, it can wake again from that experience. It can suddenly sense that the predator is far enough away. It has the opportunity to jump up and run again. And that's a thing we see in nature. So just recognizing this is part of nature as it is, but then in the human structure, the family structure, this is an inherited understanding. So, and it's biological and not recognized. Say a father or a mother needs to tell a child, you can't do something. Yes, you're doing something, you can't do that. And the voice might be raised when telling the child that. And the child experiences that as a fearful event. It stops. Now the adult or the elder is attempting to focus the child's attention, but sometimes it just paralyzes the child. And this also can be a relationship between men and women. So there can be this sense of domination to get somebody to do what you want through imposing a fear generating situation. And that's a habitual thing. We don't realize we're doing it, but it seems to work. So, you know, two siblings, young siblings, one will shout at the other, particularly if the one is older, will shout at the other because it witnessed and experienced, well, I stopped and did what my parents told me when they shouted at me because it scared me. This thing grows within us, but then it grows more in the greater social structure, so that those in power and what we think of as government will tell us things that make us afraid and, even more importantly, confused, in order to gain or retain control of us. This is exactly what Hitler did to move the masses. This is not just an art, it's a complete deep science. And this has been used for hundreds of years, but never so strongly since the end of the 19th century. It came into its fore in the early 20th century with Bernays, who was the nephew of Sigmund Freud, who basically created what we think of as public relations, using images to influence people's subconscious actions. Now, the next level is this deeper level, and I'll only talk about it a little bit, but just wanting to confirm, yes, certainly control interest groups who are at the higher echelon, particularly the top echelon of society, will use these fear induced power structures to control the masses. And yes, that means they get people to do the things they want, to get people to follow instructions, believing that the instructions they're being given, the influence that's being exerted, is for their good. But ultimately, and it might actually be in some way appearing to be for their good, but ultimately those influences being exerted are for the ones implementing the influence. So stay inside, stay safe, keep the healthy inside to quarantine from the sick people. This has never happened in human history. We quarantine the sick in order to keep the healthy healthy, but we completely reverse that process to quarantine the young and healthy. And of course, it had the exact opposite effect as what was stated. Unfortunately, the opposite effect, it's now, the evidence is finally coming out 6 years later that influence, it was known that it would have the opposite effect before the process was implemented. Are you
Thank you.
still there?
Yes, thank
Hello?
you. Yes, I got you.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
I had something interrupt. So there are those that will exert this kind of force to their own ends. Now, allowing this to step into one level beyond that, one might say below and above it, is the idea that there are structures to reality itself, to consciousness, which means we are kept in a lower state of consciousness, in a state of fear by the structure of consciousness itself, in order to keep us in the lower triangle, what we call in yoga the lower triangle, or the lower three chakras. And that's in the chakras that create the authority triangle, which has certain individuals at the top and other individuals of the greater proportion at the bottom. And this structure is not inherently bad. It's not inherently evil, but power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So initially, these power structures form so that those who have a greater consciousness can lead the mass towards that greater consciousness. The reason I'm bothering to talk about that, if this is an inherent nature of consciousness itself, then the processes that are being used, are being imposed upon us, if we understand the nature of that structure, we can use it to influence ourselves. We can use the very same structure to influence our behavior and change our identity. Is that making sense?
It does.
Yep.
Okay, so I don't want to go too deep in that, but that's a really good question, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because it then relates to the
Hello. Are you there? Can't hear you, Vidatta.
I
Well,
think
Hello.
it seems he's gone, but he'll come back. He'll come back. He normally gets disconnected. He'll be back. Let's say just hang on.
see, my understanding is basically, as animal, when we are in the fight and flight stage, after the fear is out, they go back into the state of calmness again. That's what animal
exactly.
does.
And they do that
Whereas,
by shaking it off.
correct. Whereas human being, I just see myself, you know, we have our own fear from our parents. So we actually reinforce that fear onto our children and grandchildren. You know,
Absolutely, it's heredited in that
correct,
inherited
correct.
hereditarily in that way,
Yeah,
and that actually is stored in our lifetime. When it happened, it gets stored in our
correct.
DNA.
So the
Actually,
only way, yeah, the only way to break the cycle is be conscious about it and then make a choice of not going into the fear state, but actually go into a vibration, which is now looking at a higher vibration rather than the three chakras. You go up to the heart and the next three chakras. So the vibration.
absolutely.
So you move. I think what divine wants us to do is move our vibration to a higher level consciously.
Ex- exactly. And in a way, we can call this, uh, if we're speaking in spiritual terms, we have, each one of us, the opportunity, because we're neutral, our true nature is neutral. We have the opportunity to tilt the world a little further away from hell. And in the process, we tilt it a little further towards heaven.
All right.
That process is unbelievably powerful because it's dropping a stone into water that ripples out into the field in ways that are beyond our wildest imagination. So the most important thing you can do to change the world is to change yourself.
Yep.
And you change yourself by how you look at the world. You change your perspective. Change
Yep.
the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. You begin to see, oh, maybe things are more perfect than I understood, and the universe is constantly conspiring to my awakening. Everything reflected back at me is reflected back at me because of the way I looked at it. And if I can consciously be aware that the universe is that giving, it's that altruistic, it's that loving, that everything it shows back to me is a sign, a symbol, a lesson to guide me to greater understanding, greater coherence, greater convergence. This is where we go back to the 888. The 888 is like three figure eights. It's the three axes of three-dimensional reality where they're all meeting at the common center point, and that's our core. We need to connect to that first, and then the heart center, and then the pineal gland, the mind. And then we're working from a cosmic mind. We're not working from the egoic mind, we're working from the cosmic mind. And when you get in that state, it becomes a joyful relaxation. It's a game where I can only describe it as the universe starts doing your thinking for you. You have an impulse, a desire to do something, go somewhere, call someone. And it's only afterwards that you understand, oh, that was so this whole fortunate chain of events could begin to unfold before me. It's a constant blossoming of our true essence. I hope that's making some sense.
Yep.
It
Perfect
does.
So,
sense.
okay, so what's presented here is ways of remembering this process. So, in really ancient times, the art was how to learn something. And then by the time of the ancient Greeks, the question was, okay, we've learned, we've understood. They understood far more than we have any idea. The thing was, can I remember what I learned? And they developed something they called mnemonics. And mnemonics is the noos. It's the Gnostic, knowing. How can I remember not the items that I learned? It's not repeating something by rote. How can I remember to access the state of knowing? And that happens by cues. Sometimes it was done by numbers. Sometimes it was uh, categorizing things by alliteration, the first letter of something. Sometimes it was categorizing things by rhyming. So I've taken here and presented in the best way I know a mandala that can be used in many, many ways, and we'll look at deeper, more complex ways, but this is the most important one because it's the simplest one, the most straightforward one. So you'll see it says great expectations written in a really strange way, where it's ger and then eight and then expect. And the spect is written in rainbow colors, and then underneath Asians. Then underneath of that, you'll see it says the Great Expectation Game. And that's because we get what we expect. The emotion of anticipation is the most powerful force in human existence. That negative and positive emotion determine how we interpret and then act on sensations. Emotions aren't real in the sense that they're not actually what we're experiencing. What we're actually experiencing is sensations. But then we label the sensations with emotion. An emotion is either positive or negative, and it's a scale of high positive to neutral to high negative emotion, which if we're thinking of that as opposed to the side to side polarity, but of up and down, then high negative emotion is at the bottom of the scale. And I say bottom of the scale because we're speaking about vibration. In actuality, we exist in a world that is one dimensional. When I say one dimensional, this is something I've talked about previously, that as opposed to seeing three dimensions, try picturing it as three bandwidths of frequency. We see certain vibrations at the speed of light. That light hits the eye, and the optic nerve takes that light frequencies and turns it into electromagnetic impulses that go to the brain and then are reorientated into the creation of a visual image. The auditory nerve takes audible sounds because of the vibration of the hairs inside the inner ear, which are tuned by their length and their thickness to particular specific speeds of auditory frequency, which goes through compression waves in the air. And finally, we have physical sensations picked up largely by the skin. We also have sensations that are picked up by pressure inside, but those sensations are largely picked up by the skin, mostly from the feet and the hands. One finger has as much neurological sense perception as the entire thigh, right? So you can see how much is focused on the hands. And this is why reflexology for the feet and the hands is so important, because we have the entire map of the body in the feet, in the soles of the feet. That's why they're called soles. The whole of the soul is recorded in the two halves of the one soul on the feet. The hands have a similar quality, but it's not as strong because it's not the connection to the earth, to the source. I hope that's making some sense. And what
It does.
good. So what we're talking about now is, the question is, why are you resisting convergence? What is holding you back from taking these two figure eights of information out, information in, information out, information in? Pattern recognition, pattern analysis, pattern projection. Pattern recognition, pattern analysis, pattern projection. We have this possibility of, as human beings, recognizing the patterns of behavior. We have this executive function, this consciousness to actually take apart to segment these patterns and analyze them so that we understand how they work, and then put them back together and project them out in a way that benefits us and benefits the world around us. That simple process of recognizing patterns, recognizing and being able to discern positive patterns from negative patterns, being able to analyze both and recognize how to reduce or even eliminate the negative patterns of behavior while implementing, accentuating, or even perfected patterns of positive influence. We, in fact, as a light mind being, our experience of duality is largely this recognition of the inside and outside nature of duality, the positive and negative aspect of duality, and the reaction versus response agency in reality. When we can do what you so brilliantly mentioned earlier, when we can recognize what an animal does, is it assumes this, it's drawn into fight, flight, or freeze. We tended not to recognize the freeze mode, and we concentrate on the fight or flight. But there is also this third freeze mode, which actually happens almost every instant, that we freeze for a second before we adopt fight or flight. And we only stay in the freeze mode when it's not clear which mode, fight or flight, is the appropriate response. We stay in that in order that we cannot react and simply be the plaything of the predator, that we're working on the predator's agenda, but instead we can stop, pond. It's to respond is to ponder. It's entering the state of pondering, a still, quiet pond where we just observe. And from this pure state of awareness, when we're not drawn into the outside, even if it's for a millisecond, we have the opportunity for creation, all of creation, all knowledge, exactly what needs to be done can flow through us from the inside. I hope that's making some sense. This process is what we're trying to artificially create. We're all going to face problems in life. Yes? Pain is a fact of life. Suffering and the sorrow about the pain are optional. Suffering is mental. Pain is physical, and it's a necessary, unavoidable aspect of life. But the suffering that comes from it, that's a choice we unconsciously or subconsciously make. We do it in order to survive, to avoid pain, but there is a point where we lament that in a way that doesn't help us. It gets us into a feedback loop. When that sorrow becomes, that suffering becomes habitual enough that it becomes our go-to state, we do that because it's familiar. Its familiarity draws us into us because we tend to say this ridiculous idea of better the devil I know than the devil I don't. Well, the devil I know, we know is a devil. The devil I fear might be an angel trying to protect me from some danger, or even better, lead me out of danger. But we have to be willing to enter the state of uncertainty. In the ancient Greek tradition, there were three conceptions of time. So ordinary time is called chronos, chronological. It's ordered time. It means yesterday is followed by today, is followed by tomorrow. The past is followed by the present, is followed by the future. The past and the future are connected by the present moment, and they are predictable. This is where language comes in. Language is a parasite on the organic original consciousness. Language is a representation of the first AI, human ego, and the language that supports it or creates it and sustains it is the first synthetic intelligence. We can't know anything through the mind. The mind can only guess. It can ask a question and then lead a quest to answer that question. But the problem is the mind can't resist its self-delusion in thinking that it can answer the question, as opposed to it's supposed to go out and find the answer through experience, or better still, open itself to the true self, which knows, it simply knows. So the human mind, the ego, poses a question. We call that hypothesis. It poses a higher supposition outside the experience. It then looks for feedback from the field, what reflected back to its hypothesis. We call that antithesis. It then takes where it receives no's and it refines. It implements the hypothesis and then refines the hypothesis. It reiterates, creating between the hypothesis and the antithesis a synthesis. It's not the truth, It's not reality. It's the best version of its own mental creation that it's come up with. The problem is it doesn't question that belief, which is only an opinion. That belief becomes what it takes for truth. The problem is every civilization and every constituent within those societies at every level suffers from the same malady. It's the malady that we've come to call sin. Sin is an archery term. It means to miss the mark. So we as human beings are aiming at truth, but we're using woefully inadequate tools of hypothesis, antithesis, synthesis. And we believe that when we win an argument, we establish truth. But truth can't be established. Truth existed before we asked the question, what is it? And because of this nature, right down to every single individual human being, I will develop my hypothesis of truth. I've aimed at truth, and I think where my arrow hits on the target must be truth. I didn't hit the bullseye. I didn't hit the center of the target, but I believe that my arrow came the closest that it's possible because I'm not looking at anybody else's arrows on the target. So I think I know the truth. You think you know the truth. The other person, the third man, thinks they know the truth. And when I say third man, I mean third mind, because man means mind from the root Sanskrit word. So three minds all believe they know the truth, but they're all just approximations of an absolute. And they haven't bowed to the absolute to question their opinions. And this is what is happening throughout humankind, because we're only kind of human. We're not human beings, we're potential human beings, scrambling around in the dark, grasping on what we've managed to get hold of and believing that's the truth, but it's only an opinion. So this process that I'm hoping to share with you is a light-hearted but very deep and powerful game so that you play it, but play it like a child to remember it's a game. It's really doing the most advanced quantum physics that we have now arrived at. There's a scientist who proved this almost half a century ago, maybe over half a century ago, and he got barred, he got canceled, he got uninvited to every scientific conference in the world because what he was proposing was too radical, and it's now just now starting to be accepted. And what we would call that is dominant frequency projection. So we're existing in a vortex, and whichever frequency dominates our projection or our reception, that creates our reality. And the issue is entities in power who are interested in controlling as opposed to creating, to continuing the status quo, so they keep the power they have as opposed to creating a more shared, open, creative reality, they want to make sure that your receptive frequency, what's coming in, is dominant. And what's coming in is their predominant frequency, which will then dominate your consciousness. It first dominates your awareness and then controls your consciousness. This process that I'm seeking to share with you is reversing that process, reversing the dynamic, turning the vortex in on itself. So there's a very simple method here. It's you project, expect, and collect. But you start that process by framing. You select what one thing you want to project. And this is important. If you don't have a single projected, unified projected frequency, then your influence is dispersed. This is why you have to become your own master, avoiding confusion, mixed objectives. So in the process, I've listed two different methods of remembering this. The first is the outer, is to frame it. To frame it means you're creating the picture frame. If you walked into any room, there is a frame being set, and you will either conform to that frame unknowingly, or you will set the frame and others will conform to it. And that really depends almost solely on the degree of confidence you have in your frame. Invariably, the most confident is the most authoritative. And we, by the nature of who we are, will conform to authority if we recognize it. And it is something that is not even stated, it is pure frequency. These conversations, energetic conversations, happen before a word is spoken. And so we want to be aware of that and be aware of how we set that frame. So the first thing is to frame it, to frame the picture. What is it that we want to create in this segment of intending? I say intending because intending is an action word. We have an intention, we create an intention, but that's just naming the thing. We want to frame what we're aiming at, and then we want to get into specifics. The framing comes from an inspiration. Something inside me tells me when I look at the environment that I'm in, the situation I'm in, what outcome do I want from this situation? And we're much better to recognize what outcome benefits the most. Can I create a win-win situation in the situation I'm in? When I fall back, when I resort to an egoic projection, that energy is felt, and others are less likely to comply. But if I have a strong sense of I am here to serve, but as the divine servant, which means if I can't see God in everyone, or I can't see the divine, or I can't see the whole, the group's best interest, I can't see God or the divine in anyone. Similarly, if I can't see the divine in a situation, I can't see the divine in any situation. The recognition that the universe is always conspiring to my benefit means the universe is also presenting an opportunity where I may serve everyone, including myself, in that present situation. It's like what they used to call a black swan. In every situation, there is some element that can turn the situation from a win lose or a lose win into a win win. There is usually something that can also turn it into a lose lose. Most of the situations we're being presented with now in the world are obviously leading to either some small faction wins and the masses lose, or worse, everyone loses. If left to the psychopathic narcissists on every level, the ones who are running governments, which are just 8-year-old children who never got what they really wanted, they didn't feel loved, and then right down to your children, your siblings, your parents, your extended family, your neighbors. If you can stop asking, how can I win? But also resisting the altruistic urge to, well, how can everybody win and I don't matter? No, ask, how can the most win? And remember, I'm using my gifts, I'm using my talents, as well as my passions, and combining them with the skills I've acquired in my life. And those skills deserve monetary or material return, material exchange. So, yes, I take every situation and add value to it. And the more value I add to it, the more material value I should receive only fairly back from it. And then I can distribute that material wealth in whichever way I personally feel is right. This is what self sovereignty is. It's not collect everything for me, it's can I control the wealth and distribute in the way that my heart tells me is right, because my heart is aligned with the source. When my heart is aligned with my source, then the mind automatically aligns with the heart and we do the right thing. I hope that's making some sense, and that's then the opportunity for me to draw back to the game itself. So there's this quality of I frame the desired outcome. Where do I want things to go? And then I name it. First, I name it for myself, and then I name it for the group. I name it for myself through my internal dialogue. I'm describing the outcome I desire. Describing, I'm drawing a line around it. This line used to be called in the Egyptian language a cartouche. So if you go to Egypt, you quite often get a pendant that your name's written in hieroglyphs, and then it's surrounded by this oblong circle with a tie at the bottom of it that goes in two directions. So this cartouche is where we get the word cartoon or character. Yes, my character, the role I'm playing, I'm describing my role in this situation for myself inside, and then I describe the play, the plan of action that we could all share in to get the outcome that is obviously of the highest order in everyone's interest. When I can do this, when I can describe where we are now for myself and also for a group, when I can describe that, I become a leader of the first magnitude. I've identified the problem. This is where we are. This is like Moses saying, "Well, we're enslaved and oppressed." He describes that in such a way that people then begin to listen to them because they're automatically thinking, yeah, that's exactly it. You've said what I've been thinking but couldn't find the words for. So this inspired imagination is the first step of projecting the frequency, the dominant frequency. Then we move to articulation of that, meaning I'm putting it into words that I can share with others. That's the expect. This is describing what we can expect if we follow a delineated plan of action. Then we move into collect. If you project it and expect it, you will collect it. The expectation is the important part. You have to aim at the target like a Zen archery master. You aim at the target, you then close your eyes and let go. You let go in the mind and then let go of the arrow, seeing it hit the target without having to see it hit the target. You close your eyes, see it in the mind and let go. And when you open your eyes, it will have hit the target because it already hit the target in your mind. This is what Guru Gobind Singh is meant to be famous for. That on the battlefield, while riding a horse, he would aim at his target, let the arrow fly, and before the arrow had left the bow, had separated from the catapulting string, he was already looking for his next target because he knew it would hit. What's more, he carried a quiver of arrows with golden arrowheads. The gold was in order to pay for the burial of the one he hit because he was in such a state of oneness. He understood who the described enemy was an illusion. That was just another soul playing their part, playing their role in the play. So he didn't want them to be carried with the burden of burial or their family to be carried with the burden of burial. So he was paying for the burial of every enemy he was deleting. It's the act of ultimate empathy. He was blessing them in the process. And you need to look, or we need to look at our objective, our desired outcome in the same way that we are confident that it will happen without question. And then from that, we know we will now implement the actions from this plan of action we've organized. We've seen it. We've described it. Now we enact it, knowing that if we follow the plan, the desired outcome or a better outcome will come. You know, they say from the first arrow shot, the plan is shot to hell because the enemy had a plan as well. But the point is, if you have a plan, you will know how to readjust the plan through the implementation, through the action. And what you desired, the desired outcome, will manifest. And this is so much stronger when you're trusting, enlisting, and then trusting others in the plan because they recognize the income you've presented is also the outcome, or the outcome you've presented is the outcome that is most beneficial to them. You become all focused on one common goal. Each time, this can be improved. There's always room for improvement. So the manifestation becomes the input and instigation of a new inspiration. So it becomes a process, an ever refining process of implement and refine, implement and refine. It's in the doing that we find. We can only suppose or have an idea of the ultimate outcome because our mind isn't big enough. Our consciousness has to expand to take in more detail, to refine the detail. So each round of manifestation, we get a better idea. It's like we need to chop down a tree. Well, how are we going to chop down the tree? Well, I find a fairly sharp rock and I try to make a hole in it that I then grab a broken branch on the ground and I shove it into that sharpened rock. And I now use that flint, that slate, to chop off a living branch because that's going to be stronger than the dead branch I found on the ground. And I can actually pick a branch that's better shaped to become an axe handle, right? So I use the first axe with a handle to create a better axe with a better handle. I then can use that same axe, better shaped axe handle to shape the next branch. I can actually shape by carving the branch to a better shape, the better branch to a better shape. And I can do this again and again and again. And eventually I can get enough firewood to create a furnace where I can create a metal axe head, which I implement and refine, implement and refine. You see this process of, it's an eternal process of refining the detail of what it is to be human and then implementing the process so that we improve. And by improving, we have a refined sense of vision. I'm hoping that's making some sense, and probably it's time to come to a close. I'll just go through the other words in the process quickly because there's this outside sense of frame, name, flame. We in touch with this burning desire. Don't ask how I'm going to get it. You ask why I want to get it. Why is it important to me? And then, even more importantly, why would it be important to others? Because when you can take the candle of your flame and light others' fires, when you can spark a flame, kindle a flame, a desire in other people's hearts because your heart is on fire, that's a feeling. It's not an idea, a thought. It's a feeling, and that feeling spreads like wildfire. And it then becomes the method by which you can claim what you originally framed. Frame, name, Aim at the target, and then claim it. But the essential thing to remember in that is it's coming back to the very beginning again and again and again. It's just a game. You won't be able to exercise the state of consciousness that doesn't get drawn into the fear. Oh, what happens if I don't get it? What happens if something goes wrong? What happens if they win? What happens? What? No, it's when we're resolved. I give my head to this. When you find something worth dying for, doesn't mean you have to die for it, because you've also found something worth living for. I can do this process every day by day, into eternity. I can start to roll a rock up a hill. If it rolls back down, I can start over again. If I get to one point, I can pick up where I left off. It's recognizing day by day, I'm committed to one aim. And it doesn't matter whether I reach the top. It just matters that I'm moving forward. I'm not comparing myself to others. I'm comparing myself to myself yesterday, so that tomorrow, my tomorrow self can compare themselves to me today. You just want to make today so amazing that you make yesterday jealous, and continue that process until you draw your last breath. I hope that's been inspiring. And if you're interested, I'll make another share in the week and give you information on that. I'm essentially preparing a 3-day protocol. I'm not preparing it. I've just brought it into convergence to share with you, to practice over the Lion's Gate. And if you're interested, just let me know, and I'll liaise with Sue for making another presentation. Yes,
I'd be interested. I've got one quick question.
yes,
No,
sir.
if can I use the same technique if I want, I want certain attribute. Like example, if I've got too much anger, how do I can I use the same technique, the method to overcome those things?
Yes, it's a reversal of the method that I guess I can only say I inherited. It's what the Sikh phrase "chardi kala" really means. Chardi kala, this ancient Sikh practice that actually preceded Sikhism. The Sikh practice of chardi kala is almost perfect alignment in what the Hawaiian kahonas call ho'oponopono. It's an internal process of dealing with ancestral trauma, because that's where all your anger comes from. And chardi kala means what? It means purging, throwing up. Literally chardi means to puke, to throw up, to purge the darkness. And the darkness is just the sticky black strap molasses of karma. Karma doesn't exist outside of you. All your karma, all my karma, all everyone's karma is the darkness of misunderstanding that we carry with us from our own past, from our parents' past, and from our grandparents' past, and the long line of grandmothers and grandfathers. So, yes, we'll address that, because that's the initial process. The initial process is cleaning out the creative channels which create confluence, which the karma creates confluence in, which ends up resulting in constriction of the fascia. So, this is both a physical, emotional, and mental process. that ultimately is actually spiritual or energetic. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so
Yeah,
we'll
and
address both. We'll
I
address
like
both.
to add here what we have done in Shell when I was working in Shell. We created a database of lesson learned. So the more lessons, because once you leave an organization, all your experience is gone. So if a lesson learned is created, then you begin to learn from each experience so that you don't repeat the mistake. Or should there be a mistake, then you you don't run into what if this, what if that. It's what you are basically,
Absolutely.
yeah, what you,
Experience is the best teacher,
yeah,
particularly when it's someone else's.
yes.
Yeah,
This is
absolutely.
this
Thank you. That's
this is
beautiful. But go
yeah.
ahead, finish.
This is where one of my mentors have created experience oriented management.
Brilliant.
Ex-
Well, that's exactly what this game is. It's
Yeah,
experience orientated self-management
yeah,
that then can be translated to any interaction, any human interaction, one to one, uh, one to many, one to few, one to
yeah,
many. So it can be
yeah,
interpersonal relationship, family relationship, small group, or ultimately even to business or governmental organizations, and hopefully to mass consciousness. Absolutely. So this is the same thing that your mentor was working on, which means what you have to contribute to this is absolutely precious.
yeah. And
So
they are
I'm
teaching this. Yeah, they are teaching this in University of Tasmania in Australia.
oh,
They,
brilliant, brilliant. Well,
yeah,
that's another
yeah,
line when if we follow this. So what I've uh, coalesced, I guess you could say, I've cataloged um, a convergence that the center of it is this 3-day protocol. But that
mm,
3-day protocol sits ultimately within a 5-day seminar. And that 5-day seminar ultimately sits within an 8-day retreat, an experiential retreat. Um, and this is something that it wants to be a self perpetuating, self monetizing process that, for those that can afford, high end. I've been working in Greece doing this 8-day process as a sailing retreat, but also um, an on land mirror to that for startups or restarts for people who are going to be out of the job market as rapidly AI is replacing not just lower, it's replacing middle and upper management. Kind of the lowest end of physical labor will probably be the last to be replaced. And we're going to have a lot of people suddenly 10 years before they plan to not be working with whole ideas of what they were going to do kind of cut off at the knees in the middle of their life. And that program is for people who can afford that because they have lots of disposable income, but particularly aimed at the people who want to serve with the idea of, okay, my life's changed. How can I serve the greatest good? And the reason for charging a lot on that end is then being able to offer free to the people who don't have that option, who are just like, wow, my Uber job, as soon as I was just a beta tester for Uber, and now their self-driving cars know how to do everything I showed them, taught them how to do. I don't have a job. Well, those people need a different kind of service, and they need to receive something very very cheaply or almost for free. There's no actual energetic exchange unless some energy is exchanged. So maybe that's very little bit money, but maybe the exchange is, okay, what can you do for your community? You describe what thing, your commitment you're going to make for your community, And if it's a genuine, real one, not only will we give this teaching for free, we'll help supplement it so you can do it to your best ability. Is that three-tiered structure making sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, I'll speak with Sue, and we'll organize the next meeting because we want to work quickly for this. What the next step is to writing an invitation, an RSVP, respondez s'il vous plaît, reply, please, to an invitation. And you're writing that invitation to your future self who exists at the end of the year to a massive celebration, more than week long celebration. It's kind of a 15-day celebration that has peaks to it. Starts with solstice, particular peak at Christmas, another peak at the New Year, and then another peak at the Epiphany, where the end becomes the new beginning. And then that leads into a higher kind of membership program that certainly anybody in this group or at the beginning, there's no fee for this because this is about creating a new reality. Um, but that celebration at the end of the year, your future self, you're celebrating what you, the valet for your future self, the manservant or the personal manservant or personal maid to your future self is going to have accomplished by the end of the year. So you're inviting your future self to celebrate what your present self is going to be doing and the outcome that together the servant and the master that you're serving, your future self, can celebrate together what magic, absolute magic has happened over the next 4 or 5 months. So I hope that's inspiring, and we'll get that together as soon as possible. Maybe even I can get something to her so she has it by tomorrow morning, if that's okay with you, Sue.
Yeah, it is fine. It is perfectly fine. Wonderful.
Okay, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. It would be great if there's a possibility also of getting this recording up online in the group. So, again, if this is acceptable, we can create a different group, or we can post it in this group. But it would be nice for anyone who finds this idea inspiring to invite their friends to it, and they could listen to this talk, and then we could make a more structured talk the next time around, because this is obviously an invitation to those who in the group are feel inspired. And if you're inspired, then we want to share that inspiration with others, and that's how we could do it, by having this talk. If it was productive and inspirational, then you wouldn't have to waste time repeating. You could just say, just I heard something and it's inspirational and you might like it. So
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
listen, thank you everyone here, because the very nature of you being here gives me reason for being. It gives me the outcome of what I have known my life purpose was, and I love you.
Thank you.
We
Thank
love you too. We love you too. Likewise. It goes both ways. Thank you so
Bless
much
you.
for all the time that you have given us making those diagrams, those pictures. Totally,
Oh,
totally
bless you.
fabulous.
Well,
Fabulous.
I've had inspiration over a long period of time from this same force, this divine feminine, but I crystallized it because of one person who was particularly inspirational to help refine that architecture in a way that could be fun, could be playful. You know, this idea of making loving fun, making empathy enjoyable, making sharing mutual co-creation a joy, not a painful mystery. And so you've all helped that come to pass.
That is that is
And I
wonderful.
also want to say a special thank you for that person. They'll know who they are, who really focused me over the last 6 to 8 weeks in that process. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Bless you,
Thank
everyone.
you, thank you, thank you back.